free t-shirt from Rainbow Soul, your own custom size and style. Simply make a short video, 30 seconds to 3 minutes. Post it on social media and tag hashtag Rainbow Soul Vodcast so we can find you. Answer one simple question. What does pride mean to you? Answer that question in a 30-second to 3-minute video. Tag hashtag Rainbow Soul Vodcast and post on your social media of choice. Email contests@rainbowsoul.show with a link to your post to be sure you're entered into the contest. At the end of Pride Month, we will pick a winner, and that winner will choose their own style, size, color t-shirt. Celebrate Pride with Rainbow Soul Vodcast. We want to hear from you.
Welcome to Rainbow Soul, a live show and podcast in search of deep answers and medicine about consciousness, spirituality, witchcraft, natural magic, and queer, inclusive spiritual paths of many varieties. We will explore the use of herbs, candles, colors, and nature in our personal lives, as well as queer-inspired rituals designed with transgender and non-binary people in mind. We are welcoming all pagans, indigenous two-spirits, witchy folks, conscious seekers, and people off the beaten path who want to explore the human spiritual experience that we are all capable of having. With the deep reverence and anti-racist values, inclusivity, and a healthy and honest respect for our ancestors, Rainbow Soul brings diverse guests and topics all related to queer spiritual experience. Tap into this amazing resource live and find a supportive, safe environment while exploring interesting topics and diverse guests. Listen on your favorite podcast platform and catch the show at your convenience and still participate in the contest and games. Get more information about games and contests at our website, rainbowsoul.show. rainbowsoul.show. Thank you for tuning in to Rainbow Soul.
Hello.
Hello. I was like getting jiggy. I'm like in the back.
That's because it's Pride. It's going to be Pride soon. You can feel
That's
it
right.
coming around the corner, can't you?
Facts,
You're
100%.
like, okay, wait a minute. We're not at the club yet, right?
Not yet.
I think something in our souls know, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Rainbow Soul. I'm so glad you're tuning in. This is Hollis Taylor, and I am a psychic, medium, a witch, and a coach. And I'm here. I'm also the author of Divine Androgen. It's a sacred path for gender variant people. And it's a book all about harvesting your own authenticity, which could include working on trauma. And this is my friend Lacrosse.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lacrosse Ortiz. I am a trans man, Jewish, Taino, atheist, jack of all trades, master of none, and the host of Master of None. And yeah, that's me on the spiritual path of learning, as we all are.
Path it is. What an awesome path it is, really.
Yeah.
I have found that constantly walking through a life of learning is priceless.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And my comment, you don't have to believe in a supreme being to be spiritual. That's just my thing.
No. I don't. That's a whole nother subject across that maybe we should have as a topic, actually, because it's a pretty hot topic in the witch groups. They start going on about, can you be an atheist and a pagan? It's a big debate, big debate. I say yes, but we can get into the details of why and how that's true. Yeah. But on to today's topic, which is another interesting, very deep topic today. I'm excited about this topic because, first of all, I've recently read the book, The Body Keeps the Score, which awoke me to some really deep, amazing things about trauma. Completely validated my path, and has completely validated my entire experience. And everything I wrote in this book about how I took that trauma and unwound it and made it into my authentic self and sort of folded it in a way that is more healing and a better representation of who I really am, because none of us are our trauma. It's just what happened to us. So if you ever get to read my story, people get that I've had some pretty intense trauma and that I've healed from it. And so in that, it's really beautiful to read this scientist's words and to see his this thick references, and for him to validate that what I would call consciousness practices are healing. So in this deep topic, I found another coach that completely that I was actually introduced by another friend of ours, a mutual friend of ours, and she was like, "Hey, I think you might like this person." So let me bring out Jay Morgan. Welcome to the show.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. I did start reading that book, and I definitely underestimated how long it would take me. So it's very, it's intensive. We'll say that for sure.
It's an experience all in itself. Jay,
is.
tell everybody who you are.
All right. My name is Jay Morgan. My pronouns are he, him. I live in Michigan right now. I've always lived in Michigan. But like you said, we met through Beth, our mutual friend, and I have been on this spiritual journey, I feel like, myself since 2020, when I finally got the time to slow down and really look at myself for once without attaching to somebody else. So that was a new experience. But when I was 20 years old in 2015, I started my medical transition. And so that's been the last 7 years as well. And it's really, I mean, I think that's been an awakening in itself, right?
Yeah.
Like in the book, The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle talks about how being gay in a world where everyone is heterosexual, or most people are, right? You already, like, just in going through that experience, you start looking at the world differently than everyone around you. And I can say the same for transitioning, right? Like, people don't realize what's going on sometimes. And it's nice to kind of get that different outlook on life. So yeah, it's definitely been an intensive last 5 to 7 years. But it's been really important to go through all of that. So yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, beautiful. And you're a coach now, right?
I am. Yeah. So I started life coaching. I started like looking into life coaching in 2020. And I was doing like coaching for friends and things like that, just kind of on and off, not really sticking to it, because I realized I had my own stuff to work through with my own coach. And so now that I've done a lot of that over the last couple of years, I brought on some consistent clients, and it's been awesome to watch other people go through this, just through our conversations, and then like watching them show up every week and like hearing the language that they use, like realizing that they are doing the work, and like knowing that I had an impact on that. But at the end of the day, it's all them, right? Like, and that's what I always want to make sure I get to my clients, is like the conversations we have are 25% of the work. 75% of this happens outside of these calls. So it's on you, right? I can give you all the tools, but you have to use them. So yeah, it's been really fulfilling to meet so many different people through coaching.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a beautiful, I think it's a calling to be any kind of coach, counselor, therapist, anything in that. I think it's a form of healing, actually. I personally believe that it's a healing modality.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it takes a special touch, and it takes a little bit of patience often, because we often have to repeat the same instructions 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times.
Yeah. Go ahead.
But that's okay, because you're right. When we do see a person transform, we're like, you got it, and we can be their best cheerleader.
Yeah.
And that can be really beautiful. So I know that you've taken a little bit of a deep dive into, you've become trauma informed.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about, like, because we're seeing that everywhere, right? Like, you're looking at coaches and therapists and all kinds yoga, all kinds of things. You're seeing this label called trauma informed. What does that
Yeah.
mean? Let's define what that means.
Yeah. So, I mean, I feel like in a way it can speak for itself, right? You're informed in trauma. But trauma shows up and manifests in people in so many different ways. And so, being aware of that, noticing those patterns, right? Even like bodily behaviors, different things like that. It really helps to understand how it's showing up for each person. And, just being able to witness that in people and to recognize that and to point it out, even, right? Like as a coach, like I have that permission to ask, like, hey, what's that about? Right? Like, I noticed you did this thing. What's that about? Right? And so really being trauma informed from what I've been experiencing so far is just really knowing what people have gone through and realizing that it's showing up in ways that they may not be aware of at the moment. Right? And just talking about that and having that open conversation of like, hey, I noticed this was going on, can we talk about this, that kind of thing. So I've taken one trauma informed class, so I don't want to speak to all of it, but that's what I've picked up on through it. And I think even just in that, being able to witness people's trauma manifesting in different ways, and saying something about it out loud, is really a powerful thing to do for someone. So, yeah.
In my understanding of it, essentially means that you also are aware that, yeah, you're aware that they could be triggered by something that happened
Yeah.
that could be like totally unintentional in that way. But they may interpret it that way. And then as a result, you also may be a little bit more sensitive. As a coach, you even
Right.
kind of have some idea of how to be sensitive to the topic and also approach the topic gently and say,
Right.
you might want to take a look at this, and you might want to work with your therapist with this. This
Right.
might be something I can support you in, but you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
because some trauma out there, I just want to say that trauma comes in lots of shapes and sizes. And there are lots of different expressions of trauma. And I think some of the things that I've really explored recently as a trauma informed coach myself is that, and doing like astrology readings and stuff like that, and especially astrology because it tends to show the trauma in
Mm.
the astrology.
Mhm.
And so I have to be aware of it. And then how do I approach it slowly and so there's
Yeah.
that kind of thing, and I think as I've done that, the one thing I've noticed is that if a person is more, like, suffering with something like dissociative identity disorder, the chances of them being able to really come into that trauma and process it in a healthy way with a coach on a Zoom call is
Mhm.
probably not real good. They probably need to be seeing a therapist, and there might be some exceptions to that.
Right.
But someone that also has some levels of CPTSD also, so these diagnoses are important for us to recognize as coaches, so that they can get the professional help, hopefully. My biggest issue I've noticed is that some people don't have access to good professional help for trauma. Are
Yeah.
you noticing that, Jay?
Yeah, I think I personally haven't run into anyone like coaching wise, right? Client wise, that has expressed like, hey, therapy isn't affordable for me or therapy isn't, accessible for me, but I know that it's an issue. And I think could be, I'm just guessing here, maybe one reason why coaching has become so big recently, right? Because it's a different I don't know, it's just a different path, I guess. I don't know how to explain it. But right, with insurance and all it feels like there's a lot of blocks or blockades around getting therapy, right? Like first you have to have insurance and it has to be affordable and all this stuff, right? Whereas coaches, like you can, as a coach anyways, from what I've experienced, I can charge anything. And so like I can, do like a pay what you can model, right, for clients. That's what I'm practicing right now, where it's like I know that these people are seeking some sort of guidance or assistance or support or whatever, right? And like I want to charge for this, but I also know that like people have to be able to show up. So it's like, what's a number that you are a little afraid of but still are willing to show up for, right? And so I think that's the flexibility when it comes to being a coach, is like I can name that, whereas like right with therapy, people don't always get the choice to choose how much they can pay, so it's definitely a detriment in that aspect, especially because I feel like a lot of issues just go back to mental health and having mental health care, right? And so not giving people access to that stuff is detrimental to the future. So
what I've noticed is also what I notice about some people is that, especially for trans people, queer people in general, if they live somewhere that's barely queer friendly, it also doesn't always have good types of therapy for them.
right.
Because as you'll find as you get deeper into The Body Keeps the Score, this man also gets into the politics and the unfortunate reality of our politics, and how pharmaceutical companies are lobbying our politicians. And that's a problem.
It is.
It is.
I just learned the definition of lobbying the other day, and it's like persuasion, like coercion, and I'm just like, how is this legal? Like, how is this happen? Like, just so obviously happening, right? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and it's actually Bessel van der Kerk presented the Association for Psychology with tons of evidence. He has it all well noted in the back of his book, of that the worst treatment for trauma is medications, and the best treatment for trauma is consciousness activities.
Yeah.
Like yoga.
Yep.
Meditation.
Yeah.
And even Stoic philosophy,
LaCrosse. Isn't that
he
like the whole
talks
like
about it?
So maybe I'm wrong on this, but maybe you can educate me a little bit, because Stoic, when I think of Stoic, right, I think of two things. I think of feel the feeling, lean into the feeling, and then release it, right? And I also think of imagine the opposite of what you want to happen, like the worst case scenario, and then realize it's not going to happen, right?
Right.
Those two things that come up.
Yeah, it's basically stoicism is you can't control it, so why bother? But in the same token, it's like, in other words, like me and what I do in my routines is I get up in the morning and I'm like, God, what could happen? I could get hit by a car. I mean, I'm not like purposely like speaking it into existence, but I'm like, I could get hit by a car. I could lose my job. My wife could leave me, my dog, whatever, anything, all these, here's this checklist. And then at the end of the day, I recap, and then you get a sense of gratitude because none of it happened.
Right.
So and also in the same token, it's kind of picking your battles. Like if you can't control it, the only thing you can control is what is within yourself.
Right.
You can't control anything externally.
Right.
So the minute you can come into terms with that, you can't control it, then you can start letting these things go little at a time.
Yeah.
So that's basically, and it's to me, like that's been very helpful for me with like my past trauma and my situations that I have gone through in my life. I've realized I can't control it. I can't let it rent space, and it hasn't been like, it's not overnight. I mean, it took years for the trauma to happen. It's going to take years for the healing. So, but a little piece at a time.
Yeah.
So,
it's also making me think too, right? Like, I think the thing that draws me so much to coaching is like, so when I first started doing this, like consistently a few months ago, I was doing a lot of mindset work, right? Which is great. But like what I've realized, and I think this probably is explained in The Body Keeps the Score, is like you have to get to the root cause of the trauma, right? And like look at that, and like look at the story you're telling yourself around it, and like rewrite it, right? Like I know for myself, I went through some childhood things, right, that I was playing the victim in, and like I had to like come to terms with myself about that and be like, actually, that because this happened, I'm so passionate now about doing what I love for a living, or living my life, right? Whatever it is, right? And that's not always an easy thing to do, right? Like you said, it's a process. It took me 2 years to work through all that. So yeah, it's a lot to take on, but once you do, you don't really stop.
Yeah.
You know.
I agree. It's been a really long time for me. Because I started around my Saturn returns, which I was about 30. Everybody goes through their Saturn returns somewhere between 27 and 35. It's your astrology, okay? And so I was about 30 years old, and I was working on losing weight and stuff like that. And so I ended up doing yoga because, well, I was exercising and it was tiring my muscles out. And somebody said, do yoga on your off days. So one day do yoga, then do your cardio, then do yoga, then do cardio.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay. And you'll get a habit of exercising every day, and your muscles won't hurt so bad, and you'll be able to get into shape, and it'll help you. So I did. And I started doing it more and more. And because I started noticing that I liked me better when I did yoga, which is an interesting thing, because I actually was more attracted to, like, as I started doing it, I wasn't real keen on myself.
Yeah.
I hated myself. I was a cutter. I was suicidal half of the time. I just hated life, and I had been through a lot of shit. If you read my book, you learn that. But as I started to do yoga that much, 3, 4 times a week,
Yeah.
I started to like fall in love with myself. I started feeling like yoga was my time, and that it was time for me to love me. And it became really special. And then after a couple of years of that, and I really lost weight, I started doing drag, and I wanted to be sure that my ego didn't get too big. I was actually worried about my ego. Because if you get in drag, you'll see why. And so I was a little concerned. And
Yeah.
so I started studying Buddhism. And I learned about the beads. I do 108 consciousness breaths per day. So that's my life. I try to do yoga and breath at the end of my yoga practice, and I try to do cardio too. So every day. And that's
Yeah.
but yoga every day is kind of vital, because I like me better when I do yoga.
Yeah.
I got sick this year in 2020 and 2021. It was the first time in about 15 years that I
Wow.
had stopped doing yoga
Mm.
because I got sick. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I just didn't, I don't know why I didn't put 2 and 2 together. Maybe because I was sick and foggy brained. And then as I started to recover, I'm like, why am I not doing yoga? No wonder my back hurts. No wonder I'm depressed. No wonder and all of the things that I was suffering from were coming from my lack of doing yoga. And then
Wow.
as I started to do it in 2021, 2022, it became easier and easier for me to heal. And then I healed faster because I took that 20 minutes a day. And that's what we're talking about here, friends. 20 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm doing 20 minutes of yoga. I do 2 sun salutations, and then I sit and do my 108 breaths. So
beautiful.
that's completely changed me from depressed, I don't, self-sabotaging.
What do you think it is about the yoga that does that for you?
Well, interestingly, I used to always think it was like spiritual or something.
Yeah.
I didn't know what it was. And Bessel van der Kolk in The Body Keeps the Score says that it has to do with the vagus nerve. So, the vagus nerve, when you're triggered by something from your past, it could get really agitated.
Yeah.
And it is the center nerve down your spine is connected to all other nerves in your
Mm.
entire system.
Mm.
So this is why like you were saying something about people's physical body
Yeah.
behaviors can sometimes be tied to trauma.
Right.
Do you want to talk about some of those? Because that's what's happening, he's saying,
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
that somewhere in those nerves are sort of wired wrong
Right.
or not in a good way
Yeah.
or agitated and stressed and
Yep.
inflamed. And then if you do yoga, if you sit with your bottom on the floor on a flat surface, cross your legs and take some deep breaths, you will change your state. Your
Mm.
vagus nerve will calm. So
Yeah.
have you noticed so you've noticed some physical sort of manifestations of it?
Yeah, so I honestly feel like I am at the stage right now where I witness it mostly within myself, right?
Mhm.
Like I know, right? Like when I think about um for okay, so just for, as an example, right? Like my relationship with food is so-so, right? I can usually tell when I'm in the middle of it, like I'm just trying to escape something, right? And so I'm just like keeping myself busy, right? By moving and doing things, right? Because as soon as I do that and I calm down, I realize that there are things that I have not addressed and I don't want to do that. Right? Like that's always like the work is like getting out of your own way and allowing yourself to just calm down and not do anything, right? But as one example from somebody else, a friend of mine actually got on a call with another coach, and what he was doing, I don't remember exactly what he was doing, but what she had him do was rub his thighs, like starting at the top and going down, and then lifting them up and coming back and doing it like that. Because if you go right back and forth, it makes your body think that you're anxious. And so when you do it in a slow way like that, it like I think it probably does something to the vagus nerve. I don't know exactly, so don't quote me on that. But there is like a calming effect that happens with that. So those are just a couple of things that I've noticed. Whether those are actually like related to a trauma, I don't actually know that for sure. But yeah, the body acts in such interesting ways. And if you're not aware of it, then I don't really know what I was going to say there, but right. But like being aware of it is the first step. So it's like just recognizing what you're doing. And then like, is this serving me? Is this not serving me? Like, why am I doing this thing? Right. And yeah, it's just really interesting. The vagus nerve controls a lot of things.
It does indeed.
And
One
yeah,
of the things that I thought was interesting is if you think about it, we all have phones, and a lot of us look down at
yep,
our phones like this,
yep.
and then we're putting stress back here on on our vagus nerve.
Mm,
And I think over extended period of time, but also some people have pointed out that that kind of covers up your heart chakra and closes it,
mm,
because I think that is also how we hold our body when we are sad,
true.
when we are not feeling so happy,
Yeah,
jump down the street type skip down the street.
yeah.
Right.
That's really
And so
insightful, though. I never thought about it that way.
mhm. And I think it's because we're closing off our heart chakra. I firmly believe in the yogic chakras, the seven chakras. I believe in them and I chant them
Yeah.
sometimes. There's a practice called ahimsa, which is essentially if you harvest peace within yourself, then it will spread all around you. And I always felt like I wanted to have sometimes I was living in situations where I wanted to spread peace all around me.
Yeah.
I think it's called teenagers. Anyway, so you want to spread peace all around you. And so I was started harvesting peace within myself. And so one of the ways to do that is to chant your chakras. So
Mhm.
it's like it's your Lam is a word for your root chakra, then Vam, which is your next chakra, which is like your passion and your creativity, and then
Yeah.
your third chakra, right? And so there's words go all the way up, and you can chant them. And I could, it's a practice that you do, but by focusing on that, you harvest inner peace within yourself, and then you
Yeah.
kind of create this bubble around you. And if you don't believe it works, I know for sure it works because I have done it
Yeah.
in desperate situations, like where this woman with dementia was screaming and screaming and screaming and screaming and screaming and screaming and screaming, and no one could do anything about it.
Wow.
They tried to give her drugs. An hour later, she's still screaming.
Hmm.
And no matter what we offered her, nothing would please her. Nothing would make her feel better. Nothing would get her to stop. And
Yeah.
so they had to have someone witness in the room. They had to have a nurse sit in the room, and they told me to do this. And so I was sitting in the room while she's screaming, and I just started chanting those. I started chanting it, raising the power within myself. Okay, and I just blocked her out, and that's what I did.
Wow.
And eventually, she just stopped. And I was like,
Oh my God.
I was surprised. Okay, I was like,
Wow.
"Oh, she stopped,"
That's amazing.
and then she just looked at me, and she was like, you know, I don't know what she thought. I can only imagine what she thought. I'm not even sure she could hear what I was doing,
Right.
and because she's hard of hearing and she's screaming,
Yeah.
so.
Right.
I'm curious, as a life coach, like right now there's so much trauma going on. Like, I mean, even like this past week, even though like I know people watch the news and stuff, but
Yeah.
as a life coach, what are techniques that you give people, you know, that would help them? And not telling me to tell me all that you do, but
Yeah.
like what are just like a couple techniques that people could use with trauma that would help them? Yeah, now I know you mentioned with the hands,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, are there like because I'm trying to grasp the whole concept of life coach and trauma. Like I just want to know a little bit more how
Yeah.
those two go together.
Yeah. So one thing that I have been starting in my practice is the somatic breath work. So,
Okay.
and it's something that I'm still learning myself, right? So it's very like in its infancy in terms of like bringing it into my practice. But what I've had clients do is, right, we'll talk about what's going on in their lives, right, or whatever trauma they're faced with throughout the week and even from the past, right, and then we talk about, okay, well, where in your body are you feeling this pain, right? Usually the shoulders, legs, back, stuff like that, right? And so then, um, based on like the work that I've learned for myself, I take some of those, like for the shoulders, right? There's like the teenage throw. So like what you do is you're doing this breath work, right? So you're like breathing in your mouth and out your mouth into your stomach, right? This whole time, and you're also throwing your arms as if you're like an angry teenager just pissed off
Okay.
at the world, right? So just to move that energy through the body, right? Because like I said earlier, I did a lot of like mindset work, but like the trauma's all here, right? So we got to move the energy out of the body. It can get kind of sweaty sometimes, right? It's a workout. It really feels like it sometimes.
Oh, burn them calories.
Exactly. Get it all out, right? And so right afterwards, your body might be a little bit sore, and so that's when like an Epsom salt bath would be nice. But yeah, just like getting the energy out of the body somehow, not because you can feel it when you're doing that stuff, right? Like it's stuck in there. And so that's one thing that I've tried with some of my clients, and it seems to be working pretty well for them. Um, I also just do different like meditation practices within my coaching sessions. So like I've done some inner child stuff, like I'll take a client back to like either a good memory or just have them like, okay, imagine yourself in the forest, right? And you're walking and you see someone coming toward you and it's your younger self, right? That kind of stuff. And really like just talking to that person, right? Like I feel like that's, for me, I know it's been really powerful. I've seen clients, say the same, where it's like being able to like be in that environment, giving my full attention to this child is really what I needed, right? So that's another thing that I do. So there's just a couple techniques that really just help people get into the present moment, right? And like you said earlier, just like let go of what you can't control.
Right.
And so, yeah.
That's neat. That's very neat.
I think
That's
it's like a
awesome.
combination of like
Yeah.
the Stoic belief system and like
Yeah.
that kind of stuff and mindset. Those are like ways of thinking, right? And
Yeah.
then maybe also like the physical parts, like the exercise
Right.
and the moving things through your body,
Yeah.
yoga. And
Yeah.
then I think breath work has its own.
It's intense.
It's funny you were mentioning the teenager, and I know when I start feeling, because like with my trauma, I tend to anger very easily. I'm like, and so I ended up buying a punching bag, one of them big tall
Nice.
punching bags. And when you're thinking about the teenager, like the minute I start hitting that bag, it's like that teenager, and it's just like,
Yeah. Right.
just trying to get it out and just remove it,
Yeah.
so that way that aggression won't come out on somebody else.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
Yeah,
totally get that.
it's amazing, right? What we do when we just allow our bodies to move, right? And I think that's the beautiful thing about breath work is like, and there, I've been learning this too. Like they just say, just focus on breathing and feeling, right? Whatever comes up, just trust your body's wisdom to do whatever it needs to do, right? Like I've been in these meditations and like I'm laying on the ground and all of a sudden my leg just needs to shake. And I'm like, I don't know why, but this feels good. So I'm just going to keep doing it, right? Like
Right.
getting all that energy out so that you can actually open yourself up to new things. Yeah, it's
Yeah, I
really
think that's kind of
powerful.
the blessing of doing like yoga and breath work and stuff like on your own in your own house on a
Yeah,
video or something, like watching a video and just doing it on your own. I think that's like a benefit because then you can be like, oh no, I want to do this. And you're not hurting anyone's feelings.
right,
You're not distracting to the class, right?
right. Yeah, yeah.
Because
Good
because
point.
I tend to do that. Yeah, I
Yeah,
tend to like also need to do something that maybe the teacher's not doing or the person
right.
guiding the group is not doing.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because
Mhm.
in the class setting, I've noticed I'm like I have that tendency. I feel it in my whole body of like I want to look around to see what everyone else is doing to know if I'm doing it right. It's like don't worry about what's right and wrong. Just
Right.
focus on what you need, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Yeah.
so
Exactly.
really learning that, embodying that, and then passing that knowledge and that wisdom along to my clients is what I've been focused on in the last couple of months. So it's all still pretty brand new, but yeah, I'm really hopeful about it. Um,
That's exciting. Do you feel you get a lot out of it,
yeah,
for yourself?
yeah. So actually, I'm glad that you talked about the chakras earlier because that's what the class is focused toward. Is like it's an 8-week class, so each week is a different chakra, and like you get these tingling sensations all over your body. The energy is moving, right? I've gotten really like I'll just say I've gotten really high from it, like almost pass out type of high, right? It's a lot, but right, like afterwards, I feel lighter. I feel open. I feel receptive. There was one class at the end of the class. I use the word magnetic, right? Like really just feeling that expansiveness. Yeah, it's amazing. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting too because the last one that we focused on was the heart chakra, and I actually had a hard time getting into the emotions of that. So that's something I'm still working on. But I did not feel that like tingling sensation. I didn't feel any of that this time. So I was like, interesting. We need to cry more.
Right.
There's a interesting exercise that you can I did a lot of heart opening stuff because my mother was a narcissist
Mm,
and is a narcissist and so she never taught me like things like compassion and stuff.
Yeah.
So this is big trauma, my friends. This is big trauma. I started to be aware of that in myself. And so then I started doing this heart opener where you just kind of stand up and just put your hands behind your back and kind of clasp them together,
Yep.
and you just clasp them together and you just push your chest out. And you just breathe like that, and you actually imagine your heart kind of stretching
Mm,
into a better, like smoother, amazing surface. And
yeah.
that to me was very healing. That
Yeah.
was very healing to do that
Mm.
every day and to focus
I'm gonna have to
on
try that.
opening your heart so it can heal. You know what I
Right.
mean? It's
Yeah.
almost like and so like I imagined that if I opened it up a little bit that it would become softer and more compassionate, and I would be able to harvest compassion for my mother's sickness and others. And that
Mm,
is true. Now I do have compassion for her. She's a
yeah.
terribly sick person. So and so like the act of doing that every day helped me. Also, I was doing a meditation. Mantras is another thing that Bessel van der Kolk talks about. Do you
Yeah.
do any mantras?
So I have some written on my mirror actually, in my bathroom. um, so I update it every now and then, but I just have like, I don't know if they're mantras or affirmations. Is there a difference? Are they pretty much?
I often dance with that same question. So I don't know. What do you think?
I think they
Um,
can coincide. Like I think a
yeah,
mantra can become an affirmation, and an affirmation can become a mantra. It's like they could.
yeah. Yeah, I think what I focus on mostly is like, do I actually viscerally feel this thing that I'm saying about myself, right? Because if I'm just saying it to say it, like I guess there is like a fake it till you make it thing, but like I would much rather believe what I'm saying, right, instead of trying to trick myself into it. And so the one I actually started saying the other day was that when I show up for myself to do the things that I love to do, the universe responds to me in positive and uplifting ways, right? So like something that comes right off the tongue, that's easy to say, that feels good to me, things like that. That's usually what I look for in an affirmation. Some of them, right, like I can say some of them and it just doesn't align, and so it's like, okay, we'll find something else to say. But like one of the ones I have upstairs is I'm a powerful creator. And so that's really, just a nice reminder for myself. And I'm very particular about the way that I speak about myself, right? um, it matters a lot to me, maybe even to a fault. But I've gotten better at taking the word trying out of my vocabulary, because in some of the reading that I've done, I've associated trying with not being fully committed, and so I'm like, okay, well, what else can I say that aligns with what I'm actually doing? So yeah, I don't know, it's been fun to figure out what I can say to myself that actually feels good. So do either of you have mantras that you use all the time?
I do. Yeah, I do. But affirmations are one thing, and but I try to actually listen to music. So the one
Mm,
thing that I've learned about mantras, and I know we have to take a break, lacrosse. So
Yeah.
I was just going to say this one thing is that when mantras are put with music, it adds to its power. So if you listen to it
mm,
as a song as you're making your breakfast or whatever, if
yeah.
you're listening to positive music every day to start your day with good power music like Mamuse, or just other positive bands where they actually say I am this or whatever, and they have good positive messages in there,
Yeah.
you'll get it gets stuck in your head all day, and then you'll be thinking positive all day.
That's good. I actually realize, now that you say that, I know we have to get going, but I just realized that I have a affirmations for greatness thing that I play on repeat when I do my shots every other week, because I'm like, I need something in this brain that's telling me that I'm okay when I put this shot, when this needle goes into my
Yeah.
leg. Like something needs to tell me that I'm okay. So yeah, I actually do have one that I listen to all the time. So yeah, it's pretty
Interesting.
powerful. Yeah.
That's actually, there's a Jewish thing. It's called Tikkun HaKlali, and it is the They call it, it's the medicine for everything, every ailment, every emotional thing. And it's these certain, well, you call them psalms. We call them something else. But they're recited with music, but they're sang. They don't just recite it, they sing these, and they sing them over and over and over again every single day. Wow. And they said that it is the recipe of wellness for everything. And that's something that they've been doing it for thousands of years. Yeah. So it's interesting.
Buddhists
about
do that too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
So
Cool.
Love it.
Okay. Well,
All right,
okay.
take a little break.
Yep, we're going to take a commercial break, and we will be right back. Hey, everybody. I'm your host, Lacrosse Ortiz, and this is Master of None, Lil Nuggets, because I'm a little guy. All right, so what's today's little nugget? Well, today's little nugget is something I've been seeing a lot of, judging. We've all been watching the news. We've all been seeing the crazy news, and there's nothing but a bunch of judgment. We see it in our personal lives. We see it within our family. We see it within our communities. And I think first off, before we start realizing what judging is, what exactly is judgment? What is the true meaning of judgment? Now, it's the ability to judge, make a decision, or form an opinion objectively, authoritatively, and wisely, especially in matters affecting action, good sense, and discretion. For some reason, judging has become warped in society. People spilling the tea, people reading others, people throwing shade, and they actually feel like that is what judging is. And the truth is when a judgment is being made, we need to look at the source. What is the source? And are they looking at it objectively? Are they looking at it authoritatively? Are they using good sense when they're making these judgments? Or are they just going with the flow and acting like everybody else does and throwing that shade? In my life, I've been in a lot of circles, and I've been caught up many a times in that judging. And I realized that I had to disassociate myself from that because it wasn't productive. If anything, it was becoming very negative. And every time I turned around, it was something somebody had to say about somebody else. And the truth is, life is too short to worry about how other people are living, to judge how other people are living. Life is too short to be wasting that time when you can be doing something so much more productive and constructive within your own life instead of worrying about other people's lives. I think sometimes we tend to forget how our judgments can cause damage and hurt and scars in people's lives. And before we pass those judgments, I think that we should really, really dig deep. So that's today's little nugget. Think before you judge or make a judgment or throw that shade or read that person. Think before you do that and make sure that all your facts are in line. And like all the old mamas used to say, if you don't have nothing nice to say, don't say nothing at all. Now, that's today's little nugget. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you next time. Jack of all trades, master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one. So what exactly does that mean? It is a figure of speech in reference to a person who has dabbled in many things rather than gaining expertise by only focusing on one. So much knowledge and wisdom out there at our fingertips, yet so difficult to grasp. Everything and everyone has a little piece of the truth, and it is up to us to determine what our truth is. In this busy world, creating the time, the space to nourish our bodies, mind, and soul has become a difficult task. So let's take a moment to learn something small, in whatever way the universe decides to reveal it. It could be someone's story, a quote, a spiritual practice, maybe a song or a movie. The opportunities are limitless and all around us if we just take a moment to see. We are all students of life experiences, so let us learn from one another. There is no right or wrong path. There is only your path and your journey. So let's begin our adventure and explore all the world has to offer, and let us become a master of none.
Welcome back. I think you're muted. You're muted, bro.
I said I just put a new Ethernet cable,
Yeah.
and I think that's the problem. It was lagging so bad. So I'm sorry, everybody, for the lag.
I didn't think it was lagging that bad. It was,
Over here, it's
I
like,
had to look.
I'm like, oh my God, no.
Oh no, I had to look really close. I had to look really
Okay.
close.
Okay.
I
Well,
think it was still good because people are saying that they loved it. And I
Oh,
mean,
thank
love
you.
that little nugget.
Oh,
I don't know who that is, but
yeah.
Facebook user.
But thank you. All
Yeah.
right. So I guess we
So
bring our guest back.
yeah, sure. And I wanted to point out this person's comment. We played a lot of positive kid songs when our kids were growing up. It's Sandy. Okay,
Ah,
Sandy. So is this you, Sandy? Songs
yeah.
about positivity, self-empowerment, self-love, spirituality to start our day lifting ourselves up. That's right. I'll play those songs now for myself. Now, even though our kids are grown. Me too, Sandy.
That's awesome.
And I love Muse personally.
Yeah.
That's my newest. I've also loved MC Yogi, and so I've gone all kinds of places. Oh, it's Cricket.
It's
Cricket.
Cricket.
Oh, hi, Cricket.
awesome.
So Jay, so you've shared a few great tips with us, and I appreciate that. And
Yeah.
I'm excited for you to slowly chew on that book.
Oh my
The
gosh,
Body
yes.
Keeps the Score. And
Yeah.
any of you out there that decide to try to read this book, by the way, if you go to my website, Divine Androgen, and you click on recommended books and you click on the little Amazon link, I get a few pennies in my jar. Okay. Anyway, I had to do that. Anyway, so if you order this book and you read this book, just expect to read only a few pages at a time.
Hmm.
Would you say, is that where are you? How fast are you reading it, Jay?
Yeah, so I tried to read as much of it as I could before this call. But a lot of what I've read so far is like just laying the base work foundation of like this is what trauma is and this is how it shows up and right, like all that. So a lot of it I feel like I've known at a certain level, but it's nice, like you said, to see that like science side of it of like we've actually studied this in people and it's very common and all that, right? So yeah, I'm still just getting the basic understanding of like what I'm moving into for the rest of the book. So it's a lot to take in for sure.
It is, and there are definitely it's got if there was going to be a trigger warning, it would probably say trigger warning everything.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
so because he uses examples of his clients,
Yep.
so they do talk about the details of a variety of trauma, including stuff that like soldiers and stuff like that suffer
Yeah.
from. And I'm with you, Quellen. Quellen said that The Body Keeps the Score is a great and triggering book. I also recognize that Bessel's confirmed a number of my own observations, and that is likely a big influence on why I like it so much. I'm with you there, Quellen. I totally have the same exact experience.
I love that.
Um, I think it's going to confirm a lot of your work too, Jay. That's why I'm excited for you to read it.
Yeah.
Because he's essentially saying that breath work is better than medication.
Which doesn't surprise me, right? Because like when I think of medication, depending on its usage, right? Because there is a time and place for it. But in the way that it feels like it is right now, largely is that it just covers up what's going on, makes you like, oh, it's not happening, right? Whereas like for me, breath work gets to the root, gets to the right to all of that dirt that we haven't dug up, right? It just, that's what breath work does, is it releases all of that, whereas medication in some instances hides everything. I don't know, that's just what
That's essentially kind of what he says. He says it kind of puts some trauma on pause, so
right.
it can be used for that. It can be used for people like with DID and like other really intense trauma.
Yeah.
If they can't face their trauma, it's easier to shut some things down and deal with it sort of a layer at a time.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what he says.
Yeah.
And that makes sense to me because in the times that I've been on medication, I've always felt like it paused.
I felt like a zombie. Like I genuinely felt like a zombie. To the point that I refuse to take any medication. I'm like, there has to be something that I can do within myself to, to gain that healing. There's so many resources at our fingertips. And I think that's, as much as, yes, there's not a lot of medical for everybody, but everybody has resources in the sense there's the internet. It's first educating yourself about what's going on with you and trying to find these avenues, that could help if you can't afford, medical treatment. So
Yeah, and I think there's definitely some instances where medications are absolutely appropriate. And I just think we need to be a little bit more careful about when those moments are.
Yeah.
And be aware that it pauses things.
Yeah.
So I kind of agree with you, Jay, and that was my experience of the meds too. Lacrosse is like kind of zombie like, and it ends up pausing your life.
Yeah.
Anyway. It wasn't. It didn't seem to get me anywhere. That's what I noticed. But what did get me places is breathing techniques, yoga, and even mindset thinking, and sort of that stoic sort of thing that you were talking
perspective.
about.
Yeah.
Changing perspective or looking at it in a different perspective. Yeah.
And so, Jay, you also, how do you feel about, like, from a coach's perspective, about sharing your personal transformations with your clients?
I think, what was it? I was reading a book called Coactive Coaching, and in that book they talk about 3 different levels of listening. So like level 1 listening is like you're talking to someone but you're just focused on yourself the whole time. Level 2 listening is like you're listening to them but you're also relating it to yourself, and level 3 listening is like you're solely focused on them. And so for the most part, most of the time I'm level 3 listening. I'm like making sure to be very cognizant of that. But right, like if there's a situation that my client is going through that I feel that my situation could either provide clarity or some sort of like same, right? Like belonging, right? Then I'll mention something of it. But yeah, in terms of like the coaching aspect, like I usually just give my clients the floor and I hold space for them and I interrupt them with questions usually, right? But every now and then, it's nice to just hear an example of someone else's life of like, yeah, I was in this too and I overcame it and now I'm here to coach you through it, right? It does help to bring those in sometimes, but I'm definitely, I pepper them through, right? To make sure I use them when it's necessary and not just like, hey, I'm here to talk to you about me the whole time, right? So yeah, I definitely add that intention to those aspects of the conversations.
Right. I think in my experience, when I've seen coaches and counselors, I like it better if I at least know they've been through something.
Right.
If
Right.
they're really hidden, I have a hard time connecting or trusting them.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting perspective. And
Yeah.
for sure, yeah, I don't I'm not talking about like, constantly bringing things back to yourself. I'm talking more like, you know, I've kind of struggled through this before, so I know you're really hurting. I know that it was really hard when I went through it, and it doesn't sound like this is easy for you. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, I get it. That kind of thing always helped me feel like I trusted my
Yeah.
coach or my counselor
Yeah.
more. And so I don't always like sometimes I look at those models and I'm like, and I'm not sure if it's just me, maybe it's just how I relate to people,
Yeah.
or if it's and so I'd love to know how you all think out there, all of you listeners, when you go to a therapist or a coach. Do you need to know that the coach has been through something before so that you can feel like they can relate to you? That's just my it's just my perspective of things.
Yeah.
Of course there is of course a line like you talked about, Jay, like, of course.
We're here to talk about you, not me. Right. Yeah. Yeah, and I do think I've noticed, anyways, that there are some weeks where I work through something with my coach, and immediately, like the next day or the next week, I work through the same situation with my clients, right?
Mm.
Or vice versa, right? So, like, my clients will bring up something, and then I get curious about it myself throughout the week, and then I bring it up to my coach, and I'm like, I'm actually struggling with this too, right? And so it's like it is very like a parallel type of situation. So yeah, but it's good to hear that, right? Like you don't get that feeling of like I'm just talking to a robot and they don't have any sort of experience to draw from, right? Like, have you struggled at all? Right?
Yeah. Or just some textbook knowledge that they don't, you know,
Mhm.
experience is very helpful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, I think a good mix of both, right, is
Yeah.
a powerhouse combination. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think for me, it might be like a narcissist trigger. Like the person has to be vulnerable for me.
Mm,
Like I
yeah,
have
that
to
actually
be
makes sense.
able, I have to be able to know that they're safe.
Right.
And if they're not vulnerable, then I have a hard time trusting them ever.
Right.
Um, if,
Mm,
so I've actually experienced both ways, and that's what I've learned about myself, and that's what I've
yeah.
concluded is I think it's a So when you have been through a lot of trauma,
Yeah.
and you heal it on the other side, you end up having these heightened senses. I think people that have been through trauma, this is
Mhm.
why queers recognize homophobes from across the room.
Yep.
Because we've already been out of the closet. We've
Right.
already walked out of the closet. We know what it's like to be in the closet.
Yep.
And now we're looking at you who's in the closet, or this person that's in the closet. And
Yep.
clearly their behaviors are stemming from that, right? We all have that. We've all
Yep.
had that experience.
Yep.
Okay.
The energy feels the same, right?
Yeah.
Like when you've heard one thing, you've heard it all, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, your jokes are not funny and they don't really do much for me anymore. So like, why do you keep this up, right? Like you said,
Yeah.
you're still in the closet, obviously.
Yeah.
Clearly.
I think it is about, right, like embracing self-expression, right? And embracing like just the fact that you're allowed to just be yourself. You don't have to put yourself into a box, right? And society's going to try to, and you don't have to stay in that box. You can walk out. You can do whatever you want. Destroy the box. I don't care, but
Right.
I do think it comes back to just feeling okay to express yourself for who you are. So,
Would you think that people are more like before, like me being older, like when there was trauma, it's like you just shut it down. You don't deal with it. Do you think that today in society people are more open to talk about their trauma and more, as a life coach, like are people more like coming to you and saying, "Hey, I have this trauma or this," like do you think that's happening now?
Yeah, from my own personal experience, it feels like more people are open and willing to talk about what they've experienced, right? Given that the person they're talking to is a safe person,
Right.
right? Like that's why I feel like it's happening, but I also feel that I'm a safe person to talk to. And so maybe in some places it's not happening as often, right? But it definitely does feel like people are willing to talk about what they've gone through, and even willing to figure out how to work through it, right? But it does feel like things have shifted, right? Because even as a kid, for me too, right? Like you don't talk about that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like you just keep it like
Yeah.
I heard someone say like unless you're showing positive emotion, don't show any at all,
Yeah.
right? And it's like that, okay, that's toxic, right? So and I think just over the last couple of years, really, I feel like since 2020, like people have been more open and willing to share. I'm angry, I'm pissed
Mhm.
off, I'm sad, I'm depressed, right? Like and
Yeah.
actually seeking the help for that in some way or another, right? Whether it is therapy or coaching or
Right.
something else. So
Right.
yeah, and
Nice.
it gives me hope, right? Like I envision a world where people are allowed to just live their lives and like feel their feelings, right? Like
Mhm.
it's okay to be angry. It's okay to
Right.
be upset. It's okay that I mean, it's not okay that we've experienced so much trauma, but right, like we're not alone in that, right? It's not like one of us has and the rest of us haven't. We've all experienced trauma at some level, right? Even like the one of the things they talked about in my trauma informed class was big T and little T trauma, right? So like big T trauma is usually like trigger warning type stuff. Little T trauma is like I got lost at the grocery store and I was terrified for my life because I couldn't find my parents, right? Um, and so it's like all of that plays into it. All of that adds up. And so yeah, but I don't know. It's been nice to find people or to cross people's paths who are willing to actually have those conversations.
Yeah. And I think it's important because now with mental health and, coming through, through from 2020 till now,
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many, like people are really talking about it because I mean, it's terrible that COVID happened,
Right.
but I think it did open the door for people to talk more about it because now a lot of people are having more T's, even if they are little T's, but a
Right.
lot of more people are having T's and they can start being a little more empathetic and compassionate to people who have trauma.
Right.
And,
Absolutely.
I think it really has somewhat helped in the mental health area
Yeah.
where people are having the conversations now.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah,
God.
and that's what starts it all, right? We just have to
Yeah.
be willing to have those conversations,
Yeah.
and they're not always easy, right? Like
No.
we can sit here and talk about it, right? And even in coaching, I can talk to my clients about it, but it's like it's a lot of hard work. It's all mental. It's all like getting out of your own way. It's breaking down barriers that you've had up for 20, 30 years, right?
Mm.
Like it takes time, and so that's where just giving yourself grace comes in, you know.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of work.
Yeah. It's a lot for sure. And I was noticing Sandy said that Sandy's never been to a therapist or a coach, but I feel it would be very helpful to know that they've been through the same situation
Yeah.
or something similar. That's my thoughts on it too, Sandy. That's why I like coaching
Yeah.
because coaches are more likely to reveal about their personal life because they usually use it as a inspirational tool. That's how I usually use it, as an inspirational tool, and I've seen it done by many coaches.
Yeah, and that's actually why I like, I guess, market myself as a queer coach because I'm like, who am I
Mhm.
gonna actually be helping in this, right? Like that's something I have to
Right.
be clear on, right? Because I want to help everyone, but like, where do I have the experience? Where is my life drawn me to, right? Like, where do I have that trauma, and who can I help through that, right? And so yeah, I do think that it's definitely a special connecting point or a belonging, like I said earlier, of like you've been through this. You've worked through this, you've made it through. Now I'm going through it. Can you walk me through this? Right. And
Mhm.
like, I think that's the thing with the coaching that I've experienced, both for myself and for my clients, is like I'm always leading my clients back to themselves. Right. Like, and that's something I've had to really become aware of is like, I'm not trying to coerce them to think the way that I want them to think. I want them to be true to who they are, right? I'm just asking them the questions to get them to get insightful about their situations. Um, So yeah, it's definitely, I don't know. I love it. I love making people think.
Okay, let's see. Cricket has a comment here. I was trying to read it. It took me a while to stop doubting myself and realize that an emotion or behavior is actually someone else's mindset, and still me do and not still me doing it wrong when I would feel triggered around someone. After healing from past trauma, I really enjoy that part of healing. Not just not just the knowing, but the feeling that I can be comfortable being me rather than shutting down to protect
Mm,
myself.
that's deep.
Yeah, it's that Libra shutdown thing. Cricket, totally get it. Astrology reveals how we deal with trauma. But yeah, it's if anyone's ever shut themselves down because of someone else's
Yeah.
behavior,
Yeah.
that's a trigger, my friend.
Oh yeah. I do it. I do it. I mean,
I do. Yeah.
if I'm feeling triggered by somebody, I'm like, no, poof, poof, banished out of my kingdom. I'm shutting down. You don't exist. I'm like, it's definitely a defense mechanism. You know.
Mhm.
Yeah, and a lot of it, right, goes back to like our primal instincts of like we just want to survive. That's it,
Right.
right? And so it's like it's there for a reason. Like I think that little nugget too really helps kind of bring some of that to light for me as well, right? Because there's a reason we have that judgment tool in our mind. It's like, okay, is this lion gonna chase me and kill me, or am I good, right?
Right.
But now it's like against other people. We're pitting ourselves against other people, right? And
Right.
it's like, okay, we don't have to do that, right? We can use this tool for what it's useful for.
Right.
But a lot of times, because of the way we're raised and things like that, we use it more often than we need to.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mhm.
uh,
Mhm.
I
the
think that's the
Yeah.
fact when you're a person who is traumatized, I think you live in that constant fight or flight,
yeah,
or freeze moment. You're in that all the time and it's hard to get out of that mindset,
yeah,
Mhm.
because when you're constantly there, okay, what's the call here? What do I got to do?
yeah.
It's
I think that's where the breath comes in, right? The breath is
Mhm.
what calms that down, like the
Right.
vagus nerve, like you were talking about earlier. Like, I'm safe,
Mm.
right? And really, like, just soaking that in, right? Like sitting in that moment and just being like, there's actually, like, I think in The Power of Now, he talks about this as well, where it's like, if you're sitting here and you're just looking around, given you're in the right environment, right? Because people don't always have the best living conditions and things like that, right? But like, what's actually wrong right now, right? There's nothing going on that like needs your immediate attention. Maybe there is, right? But like, as soon as you take care of that thing, then the moment is what it is, and you can recognize that you're safe. But it does take a lot of that, like going inward and really figuring out where the trauma is coming from, how it's showing up, right? And I think self-sabotage plays into that a lot too.
Yeah.
um, yeah, so it's a
Well, there's
multi-faceted thing.
how many? I think there's 5 trauma responses. So there's fight,
Yep.
flight, there's freeze, there's fawn.
Yep.
Now I've seen friend, where they suddenly become your friend, and I'm like,
Oh,
I have seen people do that, and I
okay.
used to classify it with the fawn.
Yeah.
Fawning, but fawning is actually when the narcissist or the person does something wrong. The person that's in a trigger will sort of fawning is where they sort of are like, "Oh, everything's okay. You're fine. Everything's
Yeah.
okay." Okay,
Yeah.
that's fawning. Yeah, we've all witnessed that, right? And friending is more like, "Hey, I'm your friend. No worries. Let's have a
Mm.
drink. Don't
That's
worry about it." Right?
mm,
Okay.
Mm.
You've seen people that react that way too, also to people, especially usually to me, it's a when someone loses their temper.
Mm.
Have you ever noticed people doing that to you, Lacrosse, when you lose your temper? I've noticed it when I lose my temper.
When
People,
I
I
when
notice
I
now.
lose
I notice I've triggered them now.
what no, when I lose my temper, people tend to freeze. They're like, it's like that, deer in the middle of the road because I'm like, "Brr," I just get aggressive and it's this vomit of anger spewing out, and I'm like, and then of course after that I'm like, oh shit, I shouldn't have said any of that. Damn it.
Damn it.
God. And the next day I'm like, okay, I'm sorry. But yeah, and now when I lose my temper, that's usually what happens. A lot of people freeze. I don't get a lot of people. I don't like the telling me to calm down thing. I think that's where you're talking about like the friend or the fawn,
That's funny.
because that only makes it worse for me. Because now I've realized, people have their traumas and it's different. If I'm yelling, it's because I feel I'm not being heard, and that triggers to my childhood that I wasn't allowed to speak. So when I'm yelling and then you tell me to calm down, you're telling me shut up. And now you just made it worse instead of letting me have my tantrum in the sense, and it'll be done in a couple of minutes. I'll be done, but it's that trigger of saying, no, calm down. You don't have to get this angry. And that's telling me, shut up, child, shut up.
Wow. Isn't that so interesting? Like how those like unheard or unspoken messages really just, they permeate right to the soul.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's when learning self-awareness and learning why, like you were saying, getting to that root of the problem. I'm not going to say I overcame anything. I think I've learned to make space for it.
Yeah.
And because it makes me more human in the sense that I know I have a bad temper and I know I'm going to lose it. I'm not going to keep it together. I'd love to be the guy who's the Buddhist and is just like all mellow and zen all the time, but that's not me. I'm like always hyper. So I think I've learned to just make space for that and just not allow it to run my life, if that makes any sense. But I don't consider myself an overcomer because I still deal with triggers and I still deal with the trauma.
Yeah, and the transparency in that is so important. I just want to like commend you for that, because like I feel like that's a thing in the communities that I find myself in, whether it is the queer community or the spirituality community. It's like, oh, I overcame all my trauma, I'm good now, right? And it's like, no, you're still a human being. Things are still going to come up, right? Like people are going to trigger you and they're not going to know what they did, right? And it's up to you to, like you said, make space for that feeling, feel that feeling, right? And then let it pass, right? It's just, and that's one of the things that I've been taught is like, you are not your emotions, right? Your emotions are just happening in a split second. And it's up to you to, like you said, make space for it and allow it to flow through. Because that's, I mean, when I think about, right, like the breath work and all that stuff, it's like just life force flowing through you, right? And so that's why, like, it's not bad to feel anger. We've just been taught that anger means bad, right? Anger means I'm in trouble or whatever it is, right? But that actually is a part of life force flowing through you. And so it's like, it's up to you to give it permission to do what it needs to do so that you can move on.
100%. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and I think we're all in our own journey, and I think we all heal in different ways. And also we heal in different, like, I think there's like chunks of it, and it might have something to do with some astrology actually. I would come back to that, like we just had an eclipse in Saturn. In Sagittarius, it was kind of going back and forth. And now it's in Gemini, Taurus and Scorpio. So 4 times over the next 4 years, over the next 2 years. So it's already happened once this year. It just happened. So for anyone that experienced some extreme emotional, where you feel like maybe someone was poking at trauma within you, it's actually part of the eclipses that are going on. It's just part of the energy. It's part of what's going on, because I believe that the astrology kind of pokes at us to heal certain things at different times. And sometimes those are big chunks. Like it's just a big chunk, and I feel like now I'm really getting into the stuff that happened that I can't remember, or that I don't remember, that happened at infancy and stuff like that I can't even probably verbalize. But I can feel it in my body. So, but I felt it in the last eclipse, and I have a Scorpio rising. So if you have a strong Scorpio or Taurus placement, or a couple of weeks ago, or in the I think it was last week or the week before, and it was like 2 weeks ago. A couple of weeks ago, there was an eclipse, and you felt it, and you're going, "Oh my gosh, Alice, I remember," because you probably haven't forgotten. So if that's happened, just know it's the eclipse. The
Mm,
universe just wants you to heal that stuff. Just let it come up. It's okay. And just let it come up a little bit at a time. It's going to happen 3 more times.
hmm
Okay? So I'm just going to say that.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
anyone.
Thank you for bringing astrology into it. Cause like, that's definitely, it's an area that I have dabbled in a little bit. But like something I picked up on over the last few months was like the week of the full moon. I don't know if it's for me or for everyone, but it's emotional. And I cannot make plans to hang out with people during those weeks because it will not be a good time. So, right, like recognizing those patterns and like actually actively making space for that to just allow myself to be and feel what I need to feel, like then I can show up as my best the rest of the time, right? But
Right,
Wow. I would
right.
love to. I bet your moon is in Cancer or something. Um.
actually, I think I'm Cancer rising.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I have
And
a
where's your
Leo.
moon at? Do you know? Oh,
Leo.
Leo.
Yeah, Capricorn sun.
Mm,
Mm,
okay. Okay.
Yeah,
But the Cancer rising probably has a little bit to do with it too. Because
yeah.
Cancer and the moon are related. Because
BFFs.
moon rules Cancer.
Good to know. Good to know. Wow. Yep. That makes a
I always
lot of
keep saying, I always tell my wife, I'm like my kids, they're just like, you in astrology, mom, you in astrology. And I'm like, look, you have your DNA to your body. That's just the DNA to your personality. This is the blueprint,
sense.
even though they're just like, yeah, all right, whatever. But then I'll look at their chart. See, I knew it was right there. I
Mhm.
saw it.
Love
That's
that.
good. That's really good that you do that, Lacrosse, that
Mhm.
you look at
No,
all your kids. I
I
use
go
my kids'
back to their
charts too.
chart, especially like with one of my older boys. He's just so argumentative, and I go back, yeah, Sagittarius, this, and that, here and there, and then and he's like, yeah, whatever, and I'm like, see, right there, there it is,
See?
it's showing.
There it is.
Your Sag is showing right now.
What, you got a stellium in Sag or something?
Oh, that's
Yeah.
Uh,
Hmm.
so
And
yeah,
astrology is beautiful for that. I
yeah,
call it the guidebook, the map to your life.
yeah,
It shows you your destiny. It gives you
Mhm.
an idea of what kind of work you'll be good at and what you'll love and how it will come to you. It just it helps you with relationships, helps you with personal stuff, including trauma.
Yeah.
Helps you understand what you're supposed to do with that trauma. Like there was always a part of me that was like, why me? Why me? I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but I think it's common for people with trauma. Why me? Why me? And I actually concluded, and I know that some people might see this as toxic positivity, but it works for me, is that I essentially say, well, all that shit happened to me because I was strong enough to handle it,
Mm,
so I could
mm,
come out the other side and help all these other people.
yeah, absolutely.
yeah. I
That's
mean,
why it happened.
I've heard that about like what you're saying. I usually just sit there and I'm like, what am I going to do with it? I can't change that it happened, but what, and it goes back to that stoic belief. I can't change it, but what can I do with it? What is in my control with that? How can I utilize it? Because I don't think that people go through their trauma just for saying, and yeah, I mean, it sucks that it happens and it's terrible, but it's, if a person can change their perspective and realize there's so many people out there that you could help
Mhm.
with that, with that same trauma, you
Yeah.
know. But then you got to be careful. You don't want to get caught in a messiah complex either. So it's just such a fine
Yes.
line.
Yeah. It does feel
And if
like
you,
two sides of the same coin almost, right? Like for me, like experiencing some childhood trauma, right? And then like not understanding why that happened to me at such a young age. And then like realizing how much passion for life that I have now and how much I'm willing to like speak out for things, right? And like actually show up, right? Like I feel like the way that I was treated as a child really is played into the channeling of that energy, right?
Absolutely.
And so yeah, it's like okay, I have some sort of gratitude for it, which feels weird at times, right? But it
Yeah.
definitely it has helped shape the passion that I show up with. So I'm for that.
And it's helped shift your perspective on the world. Yeah.
True.
On your
Yes.
and on your life.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And I always believe, I tell my children all the time, I said, every generation has the opportunity to do better than the last.
Mm-hmm.
And what I took from my trauma and my childhood is I made that conscious decision to not do that to my kids.
Right.
Okay. And not saying I was a perfect parent. I said, now what you can do is you can take all my mistakes and not make them. And it's this like evolution.
Yep. Exactly.
And you can do better.
Yep.
Than what I did. I just hope that you show the same mercy to me that I showed my parents. That's all I ask.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just show me some mercy, okay?
Yeah, that's beautiful.
So.
Yeah, even in that, right? Like I've noticed there are certain things that like my parents did or didn't do because of what their parents did or didn't do. And I'm like, okay, now I see why you did this, right? Like my dad never disciplined us because his dad did way more than he needed to, right? And so like I have a respect for that, right? Did it work? Not necessarily, but right, the heart was in it there, right? And then like my mom like knew she didn't want to raise her kids in a certain environment, so she got out of it. And I'm like, okay, thank you for doing that, right? Like picking up on those mistakes and those patterns, and then like running with it, like you said, the evolution of that. I can only imagine what that's going to do for people in the next 50, 100 years. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to see what kind of kids.
Right.
I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of kids come out of this, because
when you look at these kids today, I mean, I'm so proud of their progressiveness, their passion for life, their zest, and everybody gives these kids a hard rap, but I'm looking at them, I said, you know what, they just have the balls to do what people do. All right, and you know what, commend them. Okay, don't eat Tide Pods, please, but commend them. But
there's
like,
a line drawn, but yes,
but at the end of the day, I ate dirt. Is there any different? I was a kid and I ate dirt. They're eating Tide Pods. Maybe that's a part of the evolution. I don't know, but but it's incredible. I see these kids; they're strong and they know what they want and they know what they deserve. And I'm not going to begrudge them for that. And at the end of the day, I always tell the older people who raised them,
right.
It was us.
Absolutely.
So don't be upset with what you created.
Yep.
Maybe reflect on that.
Yeah. You sit back and take a look at that and grab a little popcorn and think about it, But and then I look at my kids, and when they're out there fighting about this and that, and I'm like, yes, you're badass. Yes, millennials, you are badass.
Yeah.
They are. Millennials are.
They are badass. So
I love it.
All right, guys. Well, we're getting to the end of the show.
Yep.
And before we end, I pulled 3 cards for us. So, let's see here. I pulled 3 cards. And so remember, friends, that when I do a tarot reading for you, that it's always it's meant for whoever's listening, whether you're listening to recording or not. And just take what you like, leave the rest. Okay. And now this first card is the 4 of Pentacles. The 4 of Pentacles is like this totally, it's like displaying your gifts to the world, showing what gifts you have to the world, and presenting it in a way that is sort of performance-like. So performing is a magical spiritual experience. And there's lots of other ways too, okay? But it could be in performing. It could also just be like websites and things like that, like things that you're offering the world, things that you're putting out in the world, okay? Including your gifts. And when you're presenting those gifts, Spirit wants you to, yes, pay attention to what you've done in the past, but also pay attention to what is now. And this is the Page of Swords. And the Page of Swords is walking forward in their power. They're bringing forth their power, bringing forth their good, positive thoughts, heading us towards forward, right? I think this card came up last week. This card's been dancing around a lot. Anyway, so this is the Page of Swords, and he's like walking forward with his power, and he's bringing forth his thoughts, his activism, his actions, and those actions are gonna be what pushes you forward and helps you manifest the dreams that you never even believed that could possibly happen. This is the Magician card of the Pride deck, and you can see right here that this is the Magician. They make the unbelievable. So the things in your mind, you're like, could I actually do that? Would this actually happen? Like, could I actually? Right? Okay. This card is saying, oh, yes, you can. Okay. This card is saying, oh, and yes, you will, as long as you walk forward in your power and bring it forward in your honesty and your most authentic self, even if that authentic self is young and fresh. And make sure you bring and present your gifts to the world. Make sure you present them into the world so that the world can find you and people can connect with you or whatever it is that needs to be happening. And walk with your power, walk in your authenticity, and you will manifest your wildest dreams. So, my friends, that's this week's cards, and I hope you appreciate that, and I hope you take what's best for you. And I want to say thank you, Jay. Thank you so much for coming and talking about this really sensitive topic.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a sensitive topic, and it needs to be talked about. And I'm glad that you were willing.
Absolutely.
So,
right. Like we said earlier, it just comes down to providing space for people. And really, like, if there's anything that I see in the world, it's that no one's listening to anybody. We all just need to shut the F up and listen.
Right.
Right. Like that's my advice.
Right.
That's it. That's my piece. Just shut up.
Yeah.
Right.
And listen.
Exactly. Yes. Because even in listening, there are unheard stories. So
true.
Yes.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the time that you all have put into this. It's amazing.
Yeah, thank you.
Jay. Thank you so much for being on the show. And Lacrosse, thank you, my friend.
Yeah, I was only a little bit on the soapbox, just a little bit.
I think you're great when you're on your soapbox. I don't think any of our viewers are disagreeing.
We're gonna have to make a T-shirt, okay, and just have me on like this little stick figure on a soapbox.
Oh no, I'm still trying to decide your poof. I'm still trying to design
my poof banished of your of my.
Yeah, I did start kind of working on it. So
cool.
so watch out for that coming soon. I might have it done by the end of Pride. So make sure you check out our Pride contest, my friends.
Yeah.
And if you comment now about the magic word, tell me what the magic word is. I put the magic word in your email. So if you have subscribed to Divine Androgen, to the Rainbow Soul newsletter, then it's in your email. And if you tell me and you comment right now what the magic word is, I will send you a free sticker. And you get to choose. Good job, Quellen. I can see Quellen's got it, and so does Sandy. I'm gonna reach out to you guys after the show and check out our next contest, my friends. So tune in. I'm gonna play the commercial first, and then I'll play the closing. But I'm just going to say, check this out. We got a special Pride Month contest. Get yourself a t-shirt.
Win a free t-shirt from Rainbow Soul, your own custom size and style. Simply make a short video, 30 second to 3 minutes. Post it on social media and tag #Rainbow Soul Vodcast so we can find you. Answer one simple question. What does Pride mean to you? Answer that question in a 30 second to 3 minute video. Tag #Rainbow Soul Vodcast and post on your social media of choice. Email contests@rainbowsoul.show with a link to your post to be sure you're entered into the contest. At the end of Pride Month, we will pick a winner, and that winner will choose their own style, size, color t-shirt. Celebrate Pride with Rainbow Soul Vodcast. We want to hear from you.
Thank you for watching Rainbow Soul. We are so grateful for your presence and listening in this past hour. Be sure you're subscribed and get notifications so you can join us and catch us every Sunday night here live. We appreciate you sharing, commenting, reacting, and inviting others to the show. This is a show for you. So tell us, who would you like to see on the next show? What topics inspire you? You can always find replays More about the host, blog posts, merchandise, information about games and contests, and social media links at rainbowsoul.show. We love to show our gratitude with fun and games and contests with prizes that celebrate who we are as a community. Rainbow Soul holds the intention to explore consciousness and spirituality in cultures with a deep reverence for cultural roots, equality, and inclusion. We are always striving to recognize the spiritual medicine available to all of us in the modern world. We hope that you walk away knowing that you are perfectly valid in whatever identity you embrace for yourself and that you are sacred just as you are. Thank you so much for tuning in to Rainbow Soul. In the land of Africa, there lives a hippo who learns to overcome being different through an ecstatic dance experience. Sometimes life is sweet, and sometimes life stings. It's up to you to decide. What are you willing to be? Asks the honeybee. The firefly reminds us that only you can shine your light. The butterfly speaks of the wonder of transformation, while the moon helps the hippo feel a confident glow. Find out what happens in a hippo dance trance. This beautifully illustrated book presents expressive artwork through gender-neutral characters that deliver messages about being yourself, perspective, and personal transformation. Order today at brighthawkproductions.com.